Thank you. Welcome to Transportation and Military Affairs, Committee number 8. We have 3 committee meetings or committee bills to do today. Senate File 53, Senate Joint File 05, and Senate File 0123. And please take the, or Mary Lynn, please take the roll, please.
Hey, Representative Berger,
Here.
Representative Nemec,
Here.
Representative Obermuller,
Here.
Representative O'Hearn,
Here.
Representative Pendergraph,
Here.
Representative Smith,
Here.
Representative Stivar,
Present.
and Representative Wiley.
Here. Thank you. Colonel Smith, Senate File 53.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm Chris Smith with the Wyoming Military Department. In front of the committee today is Senate File 53. This is another bill that came out of the interim as a committee bill from Joint Transportation. It was once more trying to address some of the ways to improve the quality of life for our Guard members as a retention idea. This particular bill has to do with when our members go on state active duty. For those of you who are familiar with workers' comp, let me start. We require our members to have their own medical insurance to go on state active duty. The problem is those familiar with workers' comp, if you go to a flood in one of our communities and you break your finger and go to the ER to get it fixed, workers' comp will cover that. If you go to a flood and you come down with the flu that night and are sick as a dog and you go to the ER, workers' comp doesn't cover that. So we require our members to have medical insurance. What this bill does is add a provision to 199403 to compensate members on state active duty per day for some of their medical costs, medical insurance costs. We capped it at what the TRICARE rate is, TRICARE being the national military medical insurance that all of our part-time guardsmen can buy into, except for a small segment of our full-time staff. So the bill in front of you on the first page, there's no changes, but it's 199403. On the second page, it's a new subparagraph E, which, subject to appropriation, allows the Adjutant General to authorize reimbursement to the member for medical insurance premiums that the member pays, and then down on lines 7 and 8, not to exceed the daily premium cost of Federal TRICARE Reserve Select, which is the insurance program, trying to make it future-proof, since you never know what the federal government may do with these programs. On line 8, we added, or its successor insurance program administered by the U.S. Department of Defense, multiplied by the number of days of state active duty. Then on line 13, we have section 2, where you see there's an appropriation for $10,000. Now, in the interim, that amount was $55,000. Through the Senate appropriations process, they dropped it from $55,000 to $10,000. And I can explain what we're talking about. When you look at our state active duty, one of the issues with trying to do this is our state active duty year to year swings wildly. What I mean by that is if you go back to fiscal year 19, we literally had one service member spend 2 days on state active duty. That was it. So the cost there of reimbursement would have been all of $15.32. Fast forward to fiscal year 21, when we had a very dramatic COVID response in terms of doing COVID mapping, hospital support, it would have cost to do this $44,000. So what the Appropriations Committee on the Senate side did was cut to $10,000 and said, if you need more money, come back to us and we'll figure it out. So that's the bill in its entirety. A couple of things from on the Senate side to answer. The current TRICARE rates, there's really 2. One is for the member only, and it's $46.70 or $1.50 a day. For a family, it's $229.99 per month or $7.66 a day. So what we're talking about here is not a lot of money for the individual, but the idea was we're making them have insurance, we're putting them on state active duty, This would just be a part of their pay for per day. Now, I will say, because this was a question, when you're on state active duty, the state pays you as a state employee what your military pay daily rate would be. So if you're a E5 with 10 years, that's $1 amount. If you're a colonel with 28 years like I was, it's a whole different dollar amount. So that's already in statute. That's the pay rate for state active duty. So this is just a small little stipend of the sort to try to make our members more whole than they are currently for something we require them to have, medical insurance. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for the committee's questions.
Any questions for Colonel Smith? I have one. So am I going to get, I'm on state active duty for 3 days and I already have insurance. I'll be kicked back the other 3 days that at the TRICARE cost, the $3, the $1.50, unless I'm married, and I am, for my family of $7.42 times 3.
Mr. Chairman, that's right. That's how the bill would work. So if you were on for 6 months, you would be at the family rate getting $229 per month for those 6 months. If you're only on stay active duty, for example, a search and rescue mission up in the mountains, and you're there for 3 days, then you're only going to get the 3 times whatever the rate is. We recognize that if you have private insurance or you're on your spouse's program with a cost, or for example, you're a federal employee that has to participate in the federal employee health benefit, that cost is like $1,000 a month. So this is just giving them a little bit back based on what insurance they could have through TRICARE.
One more question, Representative Pendergraft. So how are you going to confirm that all your service members have insurance in case they do come down with the flu and not a broken finger?
Mr. Chairman, we already do that as part of the onboarding process. Typically, when we have a state emergency and the governor approves the use of the Guard for state active duty, we then poll our people and have us show what insurance they have. They can lie to us, certainly, but we usually require a piece of paper that says they're currently insured, an insurance card, something from their employer that shows they're deducting for medical insurance, some kind of proof.
Thank you. Representative Pendergraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Smith, this is one of the things that I followed through the interim pretty closely because this hits kind of close to home. I'm very fortunate in the company that I work with is willing to pay my health insurance even while I'm gone down here for a couple of months to the tune of about $1,600 a month. My question is about what percentage, if you know, of your soldiers are on TRICARE versus how many have private insurance through a regular employee? And then how many of those other businesses that pay for the insurance for their employees are willing to carry that while they are on duty? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Pendergraft, we don't have those kind of numbers. We consider that personal to each member. I know from just kind of general discussion that we really push TRICARE for our traditional guardsmen, the one we laugh, the 1 weekend a year and the two weeks a year, because of course it's often way more than that. So we push it pretty hard because it's very cost effective. But those that have an employer paid, we don't get into that. We don't ask them about it. So I personally believe that of our part-time staff, that probably about half have TRICARE and the other half are under, either have no insurance, unfortunately, or are under some kind of other business related policy.
Any other questions? Colonel Smith? Representative Berger?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Colonel Smith, when you reimburse that rate back, that's not tax, correct? Because it's insurance.
Colonel?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Berger, great question. It would be taxed because you're not paying for insurance, you're being reimbursed. So the way this would work, it's really fairly simple administratively. Essentially, we would just tack that on to the pay that they're So it would go into their paycheck for their state active duty. It's almost seamless. I mean, it would be an accounting on their pay form that they got $7.66 a day, but it wouldn't be a separate payment. So it would look like income. And I think any reimbursement of those kind of things is pretty much income. The federal government's not going to let you get something for free.
Chairman. Question?
Representative Wiley.
Colonel, thank you for being here. How much does a guard pay into workers' compensation annually, roughly?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Wiley, I'll have to get back to you. I have actually no idea.
Appreciate that.
Any other questions for Colonel Smith? Seeing none. Thank you, Colonel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any agencies want to speak about this? Senator Boner, would you like to speak on this? Okay. Any of the public? Mr. Winnie?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, Bill Winnie, Sublette County. I don't know specifically the numbers that would apply, but I have both a son and a daughter-in-law that are Wyoming Guard. One's the daughter-in-law's Air Guard. And the programs for health insurance makes a big difference to them. So subject to your questions, I do support the bill. Subject to your questions, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winnie. Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Winnie. Do we have anybody online? Okay, thank you. Committee. What's your pleasure? Moved by Pendergraft, second by Berger. Any discussion? Any amendments?
Discussion.
Representative Pendergraft.
Just wanted to say I'm one of those that calls myself a strong fiscal conservative. But I also believe that a workman is worth his hire, and this is a worthy expense, so I'm an aye.
Any other discussion? Question being called?
Question.
Thank you. Diana, please call the roll.
Okay, Representative Berger,
Aye.
Representative Nemec,
Aye.
Representative Overmuller,
Aye.
Representative Pendergraph,
Aye.
Representative Smith,
Aye.
Representative Stivar,
No.
Representative Wiley,
Aye.
Chairman O'Hearn,
Aye.
and Representative Brown has submitted an absentee vote of aye.
Okay,
So
thank
we
you.
have 8 ayes and 1 no do pass.
Do I have a volunteer to run this on the floor?
I've been volunteered before.
You do great.
Representative Smith? Would you run it on the floor, please? Thank you for that enthusiasm. Colonel Smith, you're back up, I believe, with Senate file or Senate Joint 0005, Air Force 75th. Oh, Senator Boner. Welcome. How are you?
Good, good. Good to be here, Mr. Chairman. House Transportation, is good to be here in front of you. I just have a nice little resolution recognizing the state's relationship with the United States Air Force. It is the 75th anniversary of the U.S. Air Force. I thought we'd take some time to commemorate that here in the Wyoming legislature. And so what you'll see is you'll just kind of a list of all the different connections that the Air Force and its predecessor in the Army Air Corps has with the state of Wyoming, going back to have to give that, shout out to Representative Stiver, who's, very concerned about such things. It does go back to before the Air Force was a service in 1947 to Casper Army Airfield even, and the training mission that happened in that part of the world. Certainly, I think we all could have stories about all the impact that that mission had on our local communities, and an important part of that strategic bombardment mission that happened in World War II. And you look at what we're doing with the active duty mission here in Southeast Wyoming, and there's still that strategic bombardment mission or deterrence mission. So start off recognizing the significance of Casper Army Airfield, transitioning quickly to Warren Air Force Base here in Laramie County, how it really got to start in the deterrence business with the Atlas D, one of the first truly operational intercontinental ballistic missiles. In fact, if there's a establishment on Lincoln Way that has one of the gantries that they used to use to pull up the missiles back when they had to do such things. And so I have some more discussion on that. But the first real operational ICBM was right here at Warren Air Force Base. Of course, we were the first and only state to have the Peacekeeper missile deployed within our borders. That was the most advanced ICBM that this country has ever fielded. And one that came and went, even as the Minuteman III and Minuteman I before it was operational in the state. And that's what we still have going on to this day. Warren Air Force Base, the 90th Missile Wing, is home of one of 3 operational units that still operates these very important weapon systems that provide a relative amount of stability throughout the world. Also, we're the headquarters for 20th Air Force, which oversees all 3 missile units, not just the ones here, but the one in Montana and North Dakota. And also, maybe more as important as all that, we're going to be the first home for the brand new missile systems coming online called the Sentinel. So love the Minuteman III. She's my baby, but it's been in operation since 1973. It's probably time that we had a new one here. So recognizing that. Also, we have Detachment 940 of Air Force ROTC at the University of Wyoming that has a long and storied history, including you can count alumnus as the father of the ICBM, Minuteman ICBM, that's Samuel C. Phillips. So he's a proud engineering graduate from the University of Wyoming and of the ROTC program there. We also, of course, have our Wyoming National Guard, which this committee is very familiar with. Actually, the Air Guard started in 1946, 1 year before the Air Force officially started as its own service, and has ever since been the sword and shield as a sword deploying to Korea, Iraq, Afghanistan, and just about everywhere that our active duty military forces have gone since the 40s. We've had our Wyoming Air National Guard supporting them in some way or fashion. And of course, as you just discussed, helping out with firefighting, flood mitigation here at home and things like that. So just recognizing the work that the state of Wyoming also does to tell that story, whether it be the Wyoming Veterans Memorial Museum up in Casper, Quebec One Missile Alert Facility off of exit 39 on I-25, just north of here. And we're committing ourselves to continuing to support our airmen and tell the story of the important work that they have done and continue to do in the state. So that's the resolution, Mr. Chairman. I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. I learned a lot reading this last night to my wife and didn't know a bunch of this stuff. Representative Obermuller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I know you have a personal history with this, and I would appreciate it if you would recount that for this committee and the public. Thank you.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I was active duty Air Force for a little over 6 years. Wanted to join the Air Force to fly planes and see the world. They ended up sticking me in a launch control center under the ground here in Wyoming, but it was a good experience and something that's very, very meaningful. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next bill, Mr. Chairman. But yeah, that's what I did for the first 6 years of my professional life right out of college. As I was a nuclear missile crew commander here at Warren Air Force Base.
Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator, for bringing this. I have to admit that my first reaction was, as I want to do, to make a little fun of the Air Force. But I just wanted to relate that as a young soldier laying out on the sands of Iraq and Kuwait, when you boys flew over and did the hard part for us and softened them up, we were greatly appreciative.
Any other questions or compliments for Senator Boner? Representative Nemec.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, on what date will we be celebrating the Air Force birthday?
It was last September, I think September 17th. So,
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the senator? Anybody? Thank you. Thank you, Senator Boner. Anybody else want to speak on this topic? Mr. Winnie, come on up.
Mr. Chairman, Bill Winnie, Sublette County. My father-in-law was a veteran of both the Army Air Corps and the U.S. Air Force, serving from 1938 to 1958. Very proud of what he did. Along the time of my career in the submarine world, I spent a good bit of it in the ballistic missile submarine world. and served as the Chief of Command and Control in Omaha, Nebraska, when the brand new U.S. Strategic Command was stood up. And as such, my office wrote publications for launching missiles or bombers or whatever. And so I saw how the Air Force gets into details of things, and they do a fine job, and I support the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Winnie. Any questions for Mr. Winnie? My father was also in the Army Air Corps. I was born at Dover Air Force Base. I missed Germany by 4 months. And then we moved to Rantoul, Illinois and Biloxi, Mississippi. My dad retired.
Mr. Chairman,
I've done time at Air Force bases also.
I've been through Dover too.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Winnie. Any agencies want to speak on this? Military Department, Colonel Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We, of course, support this bill, and we very much appreciate Chairman Boner bringing this. And he consulted with us on some of the Air Guard information that's in it. Again, very appreciative of his including us in that. And of course, the military department supports the resolution. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, thank you. I think this is a very good Senate joint resolution. Any other questions? Anybody else want to speak in favor or in opposition? Come forward, please.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. I'm Erin Taylor. I'm speaking today as just a mom and a private citizen, and been supportive of Senator Boner for bringing this bill. My son is in tech training right now in the U.S. Air Force, and he will come home at the end of March to continue his work on the Air Guard base here in Cheyenne and serve through the U.S. Air National Guard. But I just wanted to express my support for this. I grew up, my dad was in the Army, so I know that side of the service, but I've learned a lot about the Air Force, and through the anniversary in the fall and through my son, a lot of communication about the importance and how the service developed over the years. So, I think this bill has great support, but I thought it would be fun to get up and express that this is a Wyoming family who's supportive of this too. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Any questions for Ms. Taylor? Okay. Do we have anybody online for this? Okay. Anybody else want to speak in favor or opposition? Committee, what's your pleasure?
Move resolution.
Moved by Stivar, second by Wiley. Are there any amendments? Do we need to go through the bill? Question being called. Man.
Representative Berger,
Aye.
Representative Nemec,
Aye.
Representative Obermuller, Representative Pendergraph,
Aye.
Representative Smith,
Aye.
Representative Stivar,
Aye.
Representative Wiley,
Aye.
Chairman O'Hearn,
Aye.
and Representative Brown has submitted an absentee vote of aye.
Okay,
So
thank
that's
you.
9 ayes do pass.
I see your co-sponsor, Representative Stivar.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna talk to Representative Locke.
Okay,
He's Air Force, and I think it'd be better for an Air Force guy.
okay. You will get back to me on that. You approve also, Chairman Boner? Okay.
That's fine, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay. You're here also for Senate File 0123,
Yes, sir.
Military Dependents and School of Choice.
Okay, yeah. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to be talking to you still. Have maybe a little less fun bill here for you here today. As I stated previously, I've had the honor of serving here at the 90th Missile Wing for about 5 years. And during that time, it was I'd say is easily the most challenging experience I've ever had in my entire life. At 3.5 years, especially, I was actively pulling nuclear alert and being responsible for the deadliest weapons in the history of the world. And so having that experience and since moving on, obviously, but still feel very connected to the mission. I was pretty disheartened to hear of some of the challenges that some of our active duty military members have been facing over the past several years, in particular, dealing with harassment and discrimination. I'd tell you that that's not the Cheyenne community that I remember, being stationed here and living here in the community for over 5 years. And I have to say I was heartened by the overall response from the community. Mayor Collins has been excellent in dealing with some of those challenges. Our local Chamber of Commerce has been excellent in dealing with some of those challenges and making sure that all the airmen that are stationed here at Warren Air Force Base they know that they're welcomed here and can be supported out in the community. I'm bringing this bill here today dealing with the public school district because unfortunately, I think that the solution there is we're going to have to empower the parents of these kids. I'll say that there have been 3 families that have moved early, PCS early. And because it was, I guess, a little bit too much of a challenge for them. And all those had to deal with, harassment of their kids in the school. And so I wasn't a parent back then. I am now. I can only imagine. In addition to all the other responsibilities, all the other things they have to worry about your kid getting harassed at school. And so what this is an attempt to do is to say, we want you to stay in our school district. We want you to, still, be there and be in our public schools. We still want you to be in our community, in our state. And so all of this does, Mr. Chairman, is gives an active duty military family the ability to basically have a school choice program within the school district, similar to Ventura County #1. It's been very successfully administered, in that community. And all that's saying is, if you file a complaint with the Equal Opportunity Office on base, and that's the whole, that's they have full-time folks there. That's what they do. They deal with sort of these HR type stuff, I guess you could say, but also it deals with any of the dependents as well. Then you'll be able to basically be able to choose a new school for your kids. So I'll go through the bill, how we do that. And I do have an amendment. I want to point that out right away. Also, because there is a provision that says if they're at capacity, then that's the grounds to deny the request. But I did some research and realized actually there's a lot of schools here, especially in the local school district here in Cheyenne, that are already over capacity. It seems like they are well versed in managing that. And
My wife and I were reading this last night,
Yeah.
and that was one of the questions we came up with. A lot of school of choice. Everybody wants the best school in Toronto County's #1. So they put that school down and it's at capacity. So that was one of my questions. So if we could go through the bill.
yes,
Thank you, Chairman.
absolutely. So it's pretty straightforward on page 2, line 5. Well, I'll start off at the beginning. For the definition, we want to make sure we eliminate it to active duty. So not National Guard or reserves. The idea there being that, when you're moving from base to base, once every 2 to 3 years, you don't have the natural supports that you have if you're maybe a more long-term member of the community. And so that's kind of what came up in the debate, in the sense, okay, why just active duty military kids? Why not everybody? And I mean, to be clear, if there's a bill that would require school choice within the public school district, I would, flat out, I'd probably co-sponsor that one, but that's not the issue I'm trying to deal with here. We're trying to limit the impact as much as possible, but while still solving the problem. So I want to point out it's only active duty for that reason. Like I said, they're not necessarily, from Wyoming. They're stationed here for a relatively short amount of time. But basically you'll see on paragraph B, that's where it says that they may transfer within the school district. And on line 11, that's a really important provision. I think really limits the scope of the bill to make sure there isn't a disproportionate impact on the school district and that they have to actually have filed a complaint on base. So I want to say that's really going to limit the bill to just solving the problem and nothing more. Now, these complaints are confidential. Some of them are confidential, so we can't get a good handle on the number, but I'd be surprised if it was much more than 15 and 20 in a given year. I'd be really surprised if it was much more than that. So and a school district with over, I don't know, I want to say 12, 13,000 students, that 10 to 15 is hopefully going to be manageable for them. So paragraph C, you have some limitations, and that's where the recommended amendment will come out on top of page 3, lines 1 to 1, 2, 3, you basically say they wouldn't be able to deny just because they're at capacity. I mean, you can see the handout, they're already well over capacity in several of their buildings. But we'll retain, if they're in the process of being expelled or something like that, we didn't want to, use this as a loophole to keep them in the school. So they still have that exemption, no matter what. Page 3, line 10, you see that they have to, they have a 10-day time frame. So they can't just sit on it forever. They have to make a decision within 10 business days. And then we have a pretty broad protection for the school district saying, don't misconstrue this bill to say that these kids are going to be automatically granted entry into a competitive program, the varsity basketball team, a competitively, manned academic team or whatever. It's not what this is for. It's just simply to move from one school to the other. And then on page 4, we have ability for a parent or guardian to appeal the decision before the superintendent, in which they follow the Administrative Procedures Act for that. And of course, we'd have to make some forming amendments if the amendment passes on line 8. So if we were going to get rid of the capacity reason to deny a transfer. So page 5 is basically forming amendments under duties of the school board. And effective date of July 1st. That's the bill, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for Senator Boner? Representative Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Boner, who would be responsible for transporting the child if they were within the district but wanted to go to a school further away from their home?
Senator Boner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I imagine that'd be up to the local school board and their transportation plan. Of course, I imagine a parent would make a decision if, say transportation would not be available, they'd have to make arrangements potentially. But I wouldn't qualify myself as an expert on the transportation plan for a particular school district.
Follow up? Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Chairman Boner? Anyone else in the audience want to speak? Any agencies? Sir, come on up.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Mayor Patrick Collins from the city of Cheyenne. I grew up living on Air Force bases. My father's company made the guidance system on the Minuteman missile. And so I moved every year from when I was born until I moved here in Cheyenne when I got into high school. So I'm used to the being the new kid in the block. I'm also currently a Global Strike Civic Leader. The Global Strike Command is made up of the 8th Air Force and 20th Air Force, and General Boussier is the new commander of that. And I'm one of the civic leaders that helps them understand what's going on in their communities. I'm also a honorary commander on the base and have been for more than a decade. And in those roles, I get a chance to meet the people that are on the base, the leadership, and understand what's going on in those situations. Kind of heartbreaking things have happened over the last year or so. We've had some airmen, African-American airmen who have children who have come to Cheyenne. And for whatever reason, I've been relentlessly, racially abused in their schools. One girl stepping off the bus before her first day of school, before her foot hit the ground, was called the N-word. And so because of that, the Air Force has had to prematurely PCS 3 of those families. PCS stands for permanent change of station, meaning we had to move them out of Cheyenne because it just wasn't a healthy place for those families to be. I sat with one of the families. I was the father of 2 sons, and I sat with one of those families and talked about what was going on as he explained to me. And looking at it through a father's eyes, it was heartbreaking for me. And so we've worked hard to try to, work on those issues here through the school district. And in my position, I don't have a lot of authority, but I have a bully pulpit. And I'm trying to use it as much as I can to try to affect change. But I think this bill would be really an important tool when you're in a situation like that and there's an uncomfortable position to be able to move to another school where you might be in a safer environment for your family, to me is a very important thing. So I really appreciate Senator Bonner for bringing this bill, and I would ask for your support of it. I think it's an important tool for the parents of those young airmen who come and serve our country. Thank you. And I'd stand for questions if you have
Thank you,
any.
Mary Collins. Any questions for the mayor? I assume you've spoken with the school district. Sounds like we need them in the room here instead of the two that we have represented here. Mayor?
Mr. Chairman, I've had many long conversations with our superintendent, and she's phenomenal, working and trying to react as much as she can. For whatever reason, I don't understand it. I think when I look at some of these very funny comedians and musicians that people listen to, the use of the N-word has become part of the vernacular. And with my Mayor's Youth Council, when I meet with the junior leadership classes and stuff, and I ask these questions of them, and they say, as you walk down the hall, you'll hear that word almost every day. So when I talk to the kids, they don't feel it as a bad word. They just feel it's part of their vocabulary. I'm trying to educate them that is not, in fact, what happens. And I suppose when you grow up with it, you get used to it. But when you come from Louisiana or you come from Georgia and you hear that word, it has maybe a different connotation. And to me, there's no place in polite society for that word. And I'm doing everything I can to correct that. But I will tell you, Superintendent Margaret Crespo is doing a great job of trying to be aware of it and reacting as much as she can. But it's really what we need as the parents of these children to educate them of what that word means and why it's not appropriate to be used in any context.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Sound like we need to PCS some other people out.
You know,
Any-
sometimes you wish you were king and not just mayor, right? You could
Yes,
fix some
yes.
problems and I would be benevolent, but not in that situation.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Any
Appreciate you
questions for the mayor? Representative Smith?
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have you had any conversations with the school district? Have they considered doing school choice for their whole district?
Mr. Chairman, through you, we haven't had that specific conversation. We've just talked about what tools are available, what kind of trainings can they do. They're using a thing called Sources of Strength right now to work on suicide prevention and these kinds of issues where they're training peer mentors within the school, adults, people in the community to have the tools to be able to react when they're encountered these kinds of situations. And so they are definitely spending time. They have a couple of people full-time working on these issues. And so they are, to their credit, I think they're trying. But I still think we need this tool.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other questions? Sounds like this will move it in the correct direction.
I appreciate
Anybody
your
else
help.
want to speak on this topic? Mr. Winnie?
Yes, sir, Chairman Ahern, Bill Winnie, Sublette County. Across my 30 years of active duty, I moved 19 times. The good news is when kids started coming along, there were only 7 moves. Some of the schools that they went to had some problems. I have a son that had a reading deficiency because of his first and second grade in Omaha. He was on an IEP through about 9th grade. And when I was out on the island of Guam, the Guam Public Schools, which had an agreement supporting military families, turned out to be substandard. My wife is a career educator, and I deferred to her judgment on education for our kids. But the upshot of that on Guam was I wrote a letter. I was commanding officer of the USS Holland, crew of about 1,400. Single biggest command on the island at that time. And the upshot of my letter as I departed was that DOD school system was put in place and the military families were pulled out of the Guam public schools. That thing wouldn't happen here because the laws are such that DOD schools don't operate in continental US. Nevertheless, keep in mind that comment about the premature PCS that you heard described earlier, that's going to be remembered in the military. And Representative Brown, who's absent, has a bill that sort of related to this one in a way. At any rate, I support the bill. All 3 of my sons are UW graduates. And in general, I think the Wyoming school system is pretty good. My wife taught in it out in Sublette County. But stuff like this needs to be addressed, and the ability of a family to bring issues to the table like this, I think is important. Subject to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winnie. Any questions for Mr. Winnie? Okay, thank you, sir. Do we have anyone online? Okay. Come on up, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Amber Leba. I'm the Vice President of the Greater Cheyenne Chamber of Commerce, and we stand in support of this bill. We think this is a vital part to put in place for our military families coming here, especially for their children. They don't have established relationships coming into our community, and this is one piece we feel that will just make it a little bit easier for them to transition to our community and really look at our community as a vital community and something that they can be a proud of being. So we do stand in support of this bill, and I can stand for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Leva.
Oh.
Any questions? Okay,
Thank
thank you.
you.
Whoa,
Oh.
Representative Berger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms.
Leba.
Leba, thank you. If the district decides against one day that to open school choice,
Mhm.
would this even be needed with this bill, or would
We do believe that it is still a needed piece of legislation at this point in
at
time.
this point?
Yeah, the school choice has come up a couple of times, but there really hasn't been talks about actually moving it forward. So I think in the interim, I mean, this is a really good piece of legislation to put in place for our military families.
Thank you.
Yes, of course.
Thank you, Ms. Leva.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions for Ms. Leva? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Anyone in the back room want to speak? No. Committee, what is your pleasure?
Move the bill.
Moved by Berger, second by Stivar. Any amendments? Now, we did have amendment from Senator Boner.
I'd like to
Move the amendment.
move the amendment.
Moved by
Uh,
Berger.
Do I need to say the amendment or
No, I think
What's on-
we have a copy of this, correct, Mike?
I'll have a copy?
Okay. Second by Stivar. All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
All in opposed, say no. That amendment has passed. Do I hear a question?
Question?
Question being called.
Hey, Representative Berger,
Aye.
Representative Nemec,
Aye.
Representative Obermueller, Representative Pendergraph,
Aye.
Representative Smith,
Aye.
Representative Stivar,
Aye.
Representative Wiley,
Aye.
Chairman O'Hearn,
Aye.
and Representative Brown has submitted an absentee vote of aye.
All right.
So that's 9
Aye.
ayes do pass with amendments.
Thank you. Senator Boner, do you have a request for one of the representatives, Brown, myself, Olson or Stivar? I'll take it. Okay. Thank you, committee. If we have no other questions, we are adjourned.